Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to be going down to Monterey and visiting the Canvas setup. This is pretty exciting. It's a huge space that you can do virtual events from, and they're going to be showing us how that works. So stay tuned for that. And if you would like to find out more about our schedule, once again, go to officehours.global. All right, let's jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
Our first one comes from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington today. He says, if Blackmagic Design asks for your feedback on improving the next pocket cinema camera, what would you say is a must-have versus a nice-to-have?
Go ahead, Noah.
I think there are a few things that they won't do just because they don't want to cannibalize other product lines. But the main things for me would be a DIN port, which is like a mini SDI, right? They had those on the pockets or micro studio cameras, I should say. Secondly, would be like to have an optional 4K output, right? So that could be a menu item to turn that to 1080p for the ATEM Mini line, or use the 4K with the larger switchers as well. And then finally, some more USB-C ports so that you can use the rear controls that they have out.
Go ahead, Jason.
Full frame sensor for me would be a must-have, and a nice-to-have would be SDI. Other than that, maybe a pretend that that autofocus is a thing in video every now and again.
Go ahead, Nigel.
I want all the controls that are in the camera to work outside the camera. So the Blackmagic software, I'd like it to control everything because I can't get to my camera without some gymnastics. So let's get all of that LUT control, everything into either the mix or in a standalone product.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
I think you can do that with your phone already or an iPad through Bluetooth, but maybe that's a different conversation. Oh, LUTs. Sorry. Okay, well, my must-have is when they were at least allowed me to tilt the monitor on the back. I'm used to the Lumix that has the tilt and swivel, which really spoiled me for this shape and size of camera, because you never, with a portable camera, just always lock it off. So that's a must-have.
Yeah, I have an odd one, which is that I really wish if I was recording 6K or and I could record 16:9 at 60 frames a second, 59.94. When you go to a large that large format, if you're trying to capture RAW, you can't capture. It's like a 1.9 instead of 16:9. It's a very odd limitation. It just limits to 50 frames a second, which means that if we want to capture that 60 frames a second, we can't actually get an output out of the camera. We've seen this. A lot of people here have seen that letterboxing that goes across. And then the only other thing for me that I'd really love to see in all the Blackmagic cameras is a global shutter. So that would be a big deal, if they could add the global shutter. Next question.
Comes from our own Chris Fenwick in Emeryville, California. Chris says, I'm slow, I admit it. Took me forever, but yesterday I learned that Microsoft Teams actually has breakout rooms similar to Zoom. I also figured out how to get a clean out from it. Can we discuss?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it was, I've mentioned this before, I believe, publicly, that one of our clients, their IT department, is becoming increasingly hostile toward Zoom. It reminds me of like 90s Microsoft technology where or a strategy where they just put enormous speed bumps in front of anything else. And then people, for lack of motivation to get over those speed bumps, they just sit down and they say, okay, fine, I'll use PowerPoint, whatever. And so because of that, I've been forced to spend more time in Teams because they are telling me that the shows that we are doing, the live shows that we are doing, where we have, multiple breakout rooms and multiple stages and a green room and a control room and blah, 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 blah. They said, they told us in a meeting a few weeks ago, they said, oh, by the way, we're going to have to start doing these in Teams. Bye, click. And they just, ran away. They dropped that bomb and just walked away. And so I didn't know how we were going to do it, but yesterday I learned how to get a clean out, which it's a little clicky, to get it, but you can get a full raster clean out. You don't have to zoom in on it a little bit.
What resolution?
See, here's the beauty of doing what a client asks you to do. It's whatever resolution they want.
It's not whatever resolution they want. It's what resolution does those teams put out?
No, I understand. I can't tell you. I don't have a way of testing it. How would you do it? How would you do it?
The wrong one.
We asked
That's
them.
what it is.
720. It's 720.
It only goes to 720.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and ask me a question again. Go ahead. I'm ready.
What resolution does Teams put out?
I believe the best you can get out of Teams is 720 through extensive testing and analysis. But you can get a clean out.
So at least it's not 750. It's not 700. It's 700p. 700p.
Yeah.
It's 720. It's a true 720p.
Good grief. But you can get rid of the little bar across the bottom. You can get rid of the menus. And we were doing this on both Macs and the other computers. And then, and the breakout rooms are super sluggish. And there's like an extra click in there. You think you've done it and go breakout rooms. Oh, wait, one more button click. Yeah. And so it's cumbersome.
Yeah.
But it was
there.
It's there, and it was comforting because I didn't think I had to totally lose the client. Because that's kind of where I was. You just, there's no Zoom ISO. So for everybody you want to pin, you have to have a separate computer. And unless you get into the NDI, and I'll tell you why the NDI stuff is problematic, unless you get into the NDI with the ISOs out of NDI, which according to Greg Gibson, every time you add another pin to the NDI output, it drops your resolution in half. So that's not really a great
it's a maximum bandwidth to the machine.
So unless you do that, you can't get isolated audio. But it was super comforting to know that, and there is one feature, it's kind of cool. In the host of the room, that person, you can see more stuff, and it's pretty easy for that person to jump between the breakout rooms. But to push people around is a little cumbersome. I almost feel like and I'm not, I love Zoom, period. But I almost feel like I was sitting there struggling, trying to figure stuff out. I was like, you know what we need? We need a Teams test kitchen. But because I think that I know for me, I have to learn this. I'm gonna have to learn this because of this ridiculous IT department.
Right. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we use Teams every single day. That's the corporate world, right? And so you have to figure out how you can work underneath the IT rules. And oftentimes it's so difficult that when you go to IT, they kind of go, well, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't really have time to talk to you about it anyway. So you have to figure out, based on what the settings are, how you can make it the best. But I've found that the real struggle I have with Teams is that in any given meeting, it could be different in terms of your latency, the output, the audio quality. We had meetings. So one of the nice things about Teams that I like is that you can actually bring PowerPoint presentations in from SharePoint and directly present it. So it doesn't have to come off of somebody's computer directly. That's an advantage, and it's helpful, especially in cases where people have bad connections at their house. And so what we were doing is we were bringing that in. Well, we had one instance where we must have been on the back server in the back closet that hadn't been patched by Microsoft. It was the worst experience. Nobody could see it. We had 150 people on the call. Nobody could see it. So what we ended up doing was just creating PDFs and sticking it into the chat. It's flaky is how I would describe it. Like, it's inconsistent. It's not the same every single time. And that's the one thing about Teams that if it was consistent, it would probably be a lot better. But it's not consistent in my experience.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
I, for some reason, immediately thought of this as a language problem. I mean, if we were doing something in a language that I was unfamiliar with, that, yes, I would be very uncomfortable, but we're having to learn a new language. And what I'm starting to see in this concept is that the enterprise is looking for security and keeping their jobs. And so that's what Microsoft is saying they're offering, versus the grassroots ground floor level of what Zoom is on.
I love that we call a $50 billion company grassroots, but
well, but I don't disagree. But that's the conversation we're having, isn't it? Because they're they that are wanting to keep their jobs, and they're being sold that security is priority, and that Microsoft has that. So that's where I'm fascinated by this conversation.
There you go, Jason.
As the other half of this same team that Fenwick may or may not be mentioning, my main problem with it is that I really would like to like it, and inconsistency is murder in any live event, period. And, the limitations need to be signed off on, really in writing, and then I'll use whatever they want.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I think we should have like a educational comparison between Teams and Zoom and other parts that answer the question in the chain of signal flow, right? So like the in destination hosting people, like even Vimeo, like basically we just look at that part of the signal chain and compare the different services that are offered, but also to go in to say, all right, so if you have to use Teams, this is the steps to get there, or you have to use this program. Like that would be super interesting to me to just see how each one of those workflows work from that setup. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I think Microsoft's missteps in this area are probably the most stunning of any Microsoft misstep. They had Skype. Sorry. They bought Skype. They had Skype, the premier, low latency, high quality. Skype, when Microsoft bought it, was a higher quality video than we have in Zoom right now. Like that's how good it was. But now what it did do is it took half your bandwidth. It would measure your bandwidth out and then just take half. Like if you had 20 megs a second, it would take 10. Like if you had 40 megs, 20. Like I'm just going to push all the bits down the path, and we loved it. Like we really did love using Skype for these things, and Leo used it forever, and I used it for stuff, and we built things around it, and they just muddled the whole thing. Like they just and I think that the biggest problem with Teams is technical debt. I think that there's an enormous amount of technical debt inside of that system that they are going to have a very hard time working their way out of. And I think that is why we see 720, why we see these wonky, slow things, why we see all this other stuff it's because the problem that Teams, and I've really thought about this a lot because we've had to use Teams on a couple things, and the pain is deep and hard and just very, anyway. So the problem with Teams is they're trying to solve a whole bunch of problems inside of Office 360 at the same time that they're trying to fix video. And so they're trying to integrate it into all these things and make it a part of those things. And they're investing huge resources while Zoom is focused on great video. And I worry sometimes when I see them adding little weird chat things and other things, like they're going to try to have us actually have conversations. Because I'm like, I hope they don't put a lot of effort into that, because what makes Zoom is that it's better than everybody else at the video part, and I think that I thought for a while with some of the stuff that Microsoft was doing, that maybe Microsoft will catch up. When Zoom bought Liminal, I stopped thinking that. They have a team inside of Zoom that is thinking 10 years out, and pulling the whole system forward. I just don't think we talk about it, but there's one Shelby, there's one, there's handfuls of people that make a huge difference. And Zoom bought the company that had the right team to drag them forward in a way that I just don't, and hopefully they'll know that, and they'll keep following, the direction of that team. But that's when I stopped thinking about, we should figure out how to learn all of these, because I think that the only one that really distinguishes itself for me is Stream Voodoo, because it's got a bunch of easier things. We're going to be testing it with some of the stuff we're doing. It just makes it easier for us to grab things from devices, and it doesn't have as much overhead. So that's the only one that I'm really paying attention to outside of Zoom. Next, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say one last thing. Just the problem is that we, as technical people, analytical people, very directed, focused people, we can look at all of the technical reasons why one thing is better than the other. But VHS won over beta. It didn't matter that beta was better. VHS won. And unfortunately, we live in a world where, I don't know about you, Alex, but I live in a world, I know you do too, where I don't get the final call. And there are people above me that are going to say, I don't care about anything that you just said. We're going to use this.
Well, that's the classic corporate issue, is that this is why little companies can do things that big companies can't, is because big companies make stupid decisions for, business reasons as opposed to for technical reasons. I mean, and sometimes you want to make them
creative reasons.
Or creative reasons. I mean, like they dumb down, there's a lot of things they just can't do, because there's so much politics and so much. I mean, we see Apple is still using WebEx. Like when you see that, when they see, like, it's not the worst. I mean, it's not Chime, so it's not, but like Chime is the worst, completely. But WebEx is pretty close.
Do you think that there's a chance that the reason Apple has dug their heels, in the ground on WebEx and not explored using something else is because they are internally leveraging FaceTime, et cetera, and they're going to develop their own conferencing system?
I think it's just it's embedded. It's embedded. They've considered it secure. It's certified. It has not. It's just not a priority. Like, it's just not a. I mean, I think it's just they have something that works in all the conference rooms and all the things, and it's secure. They've considered it secure, and it went through all of their things, and so it would take a year for them to certify a different service, and they just haven't decided what they want to do. But
plus, they got that big round building.
But that's how
who needs video conferencing.
That's how WebEx stays alive, is that all these companies, the amount of time it would take and effort to change it over, and the people managing it aren't in those meetings every day, and they don't see Zoom every day because they have WebEx, and they don't realize like how far in the past they are. It's because it's really far. So anyway, all right, the next question.
Next question comes to us from Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenalb, Germany. And Fred says, I want to route the audio signal from a MixPre 6.2 into a Dante network. Can you route the audio signal from the USB-C port of the MixPre 2 into the Dante AVO USB adapter?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, I think it's an interesting question, and this one was in Discord as well. So we know that the Avio USB-C adapters can be used for class-compliant devices. So that would include like an iPad or Android sort of style device. But I think for something that's class-compliant with FPGA, like a MixPre or something like that, I'm not quite sure if you could just plug into that. And the other consideration is that USB-C port on a MixPre can also be used for power. So in an instance where you're setting down a MixPre and you're using it for network connection or something like that, you'd probably use that port for power. So the way to go is probably take the 3.5 millimeter output and make that into a balanced output, and then with an adapter, and then also get the Avio with a XLR output. But it'd be interesting to try, and definitely interested to see if that works. So report back, maybe buy one and get it from a place that you could return the device if possible.
Go ahead, Mitchell. I can't hear you, Mitchell, but I can see something in your frame. No, we can't hear you, Mitchell. I don't know what Mitchell's just showing something. He's not talking, or he doesn't. I don't know if he knows he's not talking or not. Nigel.
Yeah, he's showing the Avio with the XLR on it. I have to tell you, the biggest challenge here, and I don't think it works from the research I've done, is you cannot get a USB-C adapter Avio for love nor money. They're trying to get me one from DV store. They're saying November.
Yeah, I think that the easiest way to get it out, and it won't be as simple as what was just described, would be, what I would do is hook it to a Mac Mini and then use Dante Video sound card, and then use loopback and just you can pull all of the stuff into the, out of the MixPre into the computer, and then route all of those into Dante. But that's probably your most direct route. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, sorry about that. Somebody muted my mic. The Avio adapter would be the best way to do it, and adapt that unbalanced output, which I don't like. I wish it was like a mini XLR on there, but it's not, and that we do the best we can. But it would be great if it could do the USB, but I don't think it's going to work.
Next question.
Comes to us from the Seventh Scroll in Brooklyn, New York, and those guys say, morning, guys. Any recommendations on a travel/portable adapter set? And he notes a lot of things here, USB A to C to Lightning to toothpick to anything else that might be needed is what he's looking for.
Go ahead, Jason.
Belkin had a really nice, tiny little kit that they used to sell at the Apple Store. I can get a link for you, but yeah, it's kind of hard to get high quality, teeny tiny little all-in-one.
Yeah, I mean, I keep a lot of adapters when I travel. So I use metal makeup bags, these little ones, and I have different things in each one. So the USB stuff sits in one, and the audio and video. I don't have like 5 or 6 of these little bags that have what I need, and then I stick them into my backpack, and it's pretty easy to find what I need. But I don't think there's any kit that you're going to buy. I think what you're going to end up with is bags. What are you showing there, Jason?
Yeah, I stand corrected. It's Mophie. This probably cost way too much money. It was like $45 from the Apple Store, and I just, I needed it. It was on production, and it's a nice little case.
It's definitely something that's worth thinking about ahead of time. Hopefully that's what you're doing right now, and buying it off of, Amazon or wherever you're going to buy it slowly so that you can accumulate all the things that you need, but you're never going to find an all-in-one kit that has everything that you need. So I would make a list of what you need and then find the best of each thing. Go ahead, Chris.
And don't forget power. I was in London once, and I had I had to plug something in, and if a fire marshal had walked in at the time, he would kick me out of the hotel.
Almost everything will handle 110 to 220, but there are a handful of things like walkie-talkie chargers. It turns out no mas, as well as so walkie-talkie chargers, hair dryers. There's certain things that if you plug them into the outlet, they heat up pretty quickly. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, so I've used the metal mesh bags, but not the metal ones, a plastic version. So do you have a link or a brand that I could look up for the metal one?
I'll try to find it. I buy them at Container Store has them.
Okay.
They have exactly, I know you'd never think that I'm specific, but I'm, these are very specific bags, and I buy them at Container Store. When I run out, I go to Container Store to get them again because I can't find them online.
Yeah, and then I also use a hanging makeup bag that's two-sided,
Right.
so you can put stuff on both pockets.
I use toiletry kits.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Todd Davis in Hutchinson, Kansas. He says, I got an awesome recommendation in Mukana chat for posterbooking.com digital signage. Can't find or remember who suggested it. Where do I send a thank you?
You're welcome. From all of us to all of you. Go ahead, Noah.
Donations can soon be made to the nonprofit office hours.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
Next one comes from Todd Davis. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the last one. Douglas Carmichael is up next. He says, if you were using a NAS, network attached storage unit, for storing sample libraries, would Gigabit Ethernet be sufficient, or would 10 gig Ethernet or Thunderbolt be better?
Go ahead, Jason.
Depends on the size of your sample library, but almost always no, never. This is a terrible idea. You want your samples to be as close as humanly possible to your actual device.
And for our producers, our team is cutting through these questions in record time. So you might want to throw a couple more in. It's a great panel. So go ahead and throw those in there. All right, next question.
Comes to us from Todd Davis, and again in Hutchinson, Kansas. Recommendations for a rack audio mixer that can auto mix 12 to 16 microphones for a city board meeting. It looks like only the X32 only does 8, and he needs Dante also.
Go ahead, Grant.
I was going to say the X32, and then I thought, I hadn't seen that restriction on 8. And I thought I had heard about it before, so I went and had a look. And it took me ages just then hunting through, and I didn't realize not only is it a limit of 8, but it's also limited to the first 8 channels. And so that's why it was hard for me to find. I was looking on another channel. So I still think if you could get your hands on, it's like the impossible combination now. You may find someone with a Dante card, but you can't get the X32, or the other way around. It's kind of an impossible thing, but if you manage to, then there are a few different auto mix external components that you can even do over Dante as well, and kind of have a whole bunch, but that's some pretty decent money there.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, a few different ways to do this. So if you got any well, if you wanted to stick with a traditional digital console that does Dante and would also have automix, you can just stay in the Yamaha family. So the MY16 little additional card you can put into several different mixers. I don't think that includes anything that's rack mount, but that would be more traditional. And then you could also do something like QSys has the Core series, where you can actually do up to 512 channels of auto mix, and you can get that also comes with 8x8 for Dante, expandable to I think 64 channels of Dante for QSys. And then also, like as Grant mentioned, you can get external processors like the Dugan processors if you have like an unlimited budget. Basically, that would be like the N model, and that you can connect over an existing Dante network, and you would get a bunch of channels. I think it's like 200 something channels on that little half rack unit.
For some reason, I thought it was 64, but it could be more. Off of this is the because Dugan makes their own.
Oh, is it 64? Okay,
yeah, I think it is still a lot. That's a lot of automix.
Yeah.
You can also break it into groups. Within, so you could have one Dugan processor manage 3 different rooms full of mics. With each with 12 mics or whatever you wanted to there. So that's a pretty. The funny thing is, so in the old days, we didn't have Dante. We had analog, and we used inserts, Dugan, basically inserts into our analog mixers, and then Dugan auto mix. You'd send it out and back, and it would do all the stuff in an external thing, as Jesse was astutely mentioning. The funny thing is that the price is the same now as it was then for the Dante one. So instead of 8 channels of analog, you get 64 channels of Dante, and it's the same price. Like, it doesn't change. And I asked Dan about that at one of the conferences. I was talking to Dan. I was like, so how is this the same price as this one? He goes, well, it doesn't cost any more to make. I just thought that was great. He goes, I'm not charging by the channel. And I just thought it's just a great approach to business. Anyway, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Jesse, that's great about the there's the TF rack of the Yamaha, which does take a card.
It's not the same card though.
Yeah, okay.
And I thought for a long time the TF didn't have auto mix.
I can do a Dante card, but it can't do the MY16 card, which is the auto mix card.
Right.
Well, and we ended up we had to get 6 TF racks to put in a whole setup because we couldn't get the X32s, and I just fight it every time. And one of those things is delay on outputs. You can do a delay on input. You can't do it on that.
You can't delay on output on a TF?
No.
Oh, that is...
It's a killer.
That is like can't buy this rack. Can't buy this mixer because of that. You can't... And you can't... What?
Yeah, you end up inserting an effects rack essentially to try to do it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like that is the how I don't understand. Like, I literally am befuddled by the idea that you can't delay an output. Okay, we're going to move on now. I'm a little traumatized by that. Next question.
Guy Cochran, show friend in Seattle, Washington, says, do you run Dante on an existing network or a separate one?
Go ahead, Grant.
All on the same one, and I've heard people talk about this. So I've got a Ubiquiti network. So I've got a Dream Machine Pro. I've got the Pro Switch, 48 port power over Ethernet, and I know people do separate VLANs and things. I run everything. I've got probably 10 computers that I'm running, multi-channel, X32. It loves it. All works great. I have no problems with it at all. So, the same thing.
Nigel?
Yeah, same thing. I'm not using it probably as much as Grant is, but I've been playing with it and trying to learn it. But according to my level 2 certification, you really shouldn't. But I think I would separate out 2 thoughts that Grant did. The thought of one which is a completely separate network, a completely separate VLAN within that network. And I think it would be, if you were going into production and it was mission critical, then I would definitely do a different VLAN, if not a different network.
Go ahead, Jason.
I've done it both ways, and just separate subnet and tagging has yet to give me any issues.
Go, Jesse.
Well, yeah, just use a Brian Maddox-ism and just say that it depends. It probably, if you're starting out with Dante, it's definitely good to have a separate switch and isolate it. And if you're going to be loading onto an existing network, or you're just showing up to plug into a network, you really have to look at the DSCP prioritization and how the QoS is sort of managed on that existing network in order to make it play nicely with other protocols. So that's why they have the primary and secondary ports on a lot of devices, so that if you have those separate hardware switches, you have failovers and things like that. And a lot of folks in the pro audio world just have totally isolated, totally separate Dante network, so they don't have to ask that question. They just show up with the separate switches.
Go ahead, Jason.
One more addendum on that. If you have primary and secondary, absolutely do not run those on the same network. You will end up just falling all over yourself.
Yeah, so what we generally don't even share copper. Like the Dante is on its own, like literally its own Ethernet lines and its own switches, and everything else is completely separate. It's not that you have to do that. It's not you can't work it in a regular network. It's that when something goes wrong with something, you now have a whole bunch of variables that you have to manage. Whereas if you keep everything this very isolated, either on a VLAN, but preferably on its own copper, when something goes wrong, you pay attention to that one network, and you're not throwing the rest of your network into chaos while you try to figure out this one. So sometimes the separation is less about what actually. So I think that Grant is right that it should be able to work on my network at home. It just runs on the same. It runs with everything else, and I don't try to separate it out, and it works just fine. So I think that that's it can work inside of that network, but in a production facility, we want it to run separately, mostly so that we can DX it or DX the network separately from each other. Having these all merged together is what means that when something goes wrong, everything goes wrong, and so we like to keep those things in separate lanes. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. And Stefan says, the new Blackmagic Hyperdeck Shuttle HD already seems to be sold out in Germany. Is it worth pre-ordering?
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, it's a solid device. For me, my main rig is still SDI based, so I've held off for now, even though some of my smaller rigs are HDMI based. The only kind of hang up besides the format of the output obviously is the resolution, but then I know that it's very specific on format like the other Hyperdecks. Is that correct?
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah, like it's really specific on what format it can play back, right? You have
they just all have to be the same. So
okay.
It's, and Hyperdeck will always play back what it gets, what it records, but it's not that it has to be a specific format. It has to be all the same. Everything that's on one card has to be the same, and it has to be the same all the way down to the metadata. Like it cannot be any different, and that's why we talked earlier about the fact that I can form everything. I just throw it onto a compressor, and into compressor and just push it out at a setting that I know is going to be the same every single time, and then everything works fine. Like it's not. It took us a little while to get figure that out, but it's not like I don't think it's very well documented that that's the way you need to do it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, after hearing an SSL, solid state logic, bus compressor, what it did to punch up a local band's show, I'd love the same for my mixers. Would an SSL SiX give me a similar effect?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, I mean, the word punch up is one of those subjective sort of audio words like warm and things like that. So you might just want to try it out and buy it and see what it sounds like for yourself. But I mean, any compressor would increase the sort of overall average level, and that has could do that. So it has a compressor. So it's hard to say if it matches the SSL bus compressor, which is a much higher end device, but you could probably get close.
Go ahead, Noah.
I have a young up and coming mixer friend of mine from my church, and he really, really loves that SSL as well, and he'll put it on like every single bus. And I'm like, well, if you put it on everything, it's not really gonna help. Like it's just everything's gonna have that same like booster on the EQ. But anyway, it's another argument.
Next question.
Todd Davis in Hutchinson, Kansas says, we have a bunch of AirTame adapters for sending Windows computers video to TVs in conference rooms. They have not been reliable. Has anyone used Ditto for Apple's TVs? Any other recommendations?
I have not used Ditto. There is, I was looking for, and I just can't think of the name of there's a, what we've seen before, I believe is called, excuse me, Screen Beam. The Screen Beam 960, I think, is what we've seen in conference rooms. I don't have to worry about it because our conference room just does, we just do Apple TV and we have Apple devices. And so it all works really well. But as far as getting things, from a PC over, I think the Screen Beams are what we've seen in conference rooms. I haven't needed to use them. Go ahead, Jesse.
HDCP. Maybe over a cable, that would do it with a KVM included HDCP converter box. If you're just trying to,
I think the goal though with this, from what he's talking about, is really a wireless. Like I can just share something to the screen. Go ahead, Grant. That's how the Apple TV comes in there. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I've used a barcode click share. And so it's really just a little USB dongle with a big button on it. And you plug that in and it runs a little software, particularly on Windows, but it works on Mac as well. Then you click the button and it takes over. And so it's got a receiver on it as well. That works fine. I've used them in some conference rooms and it's okay. I would always just prefer a cable and just give me the HDMI cable and let me do it that way. But this can work quite well and you can do multiple sharing, a couple of machines sharing on one screen and things like that. So there's, and it's Barco, so it's not a small brand.
I believe that, and I'm just trying to find it here, but I believe also that Fujitsu of all companies makes some kind of adapter. And the only reason I know about it, I was waiting for a rental car at like some conference and talking to the guy next to me, and he's like, "Oh, I sell this thing," and it was a Fujitsu, but I can't find it right now. Go ahead, Jesse.
Sorry, a small correction. I meant to say HD base T, and I said HDCP, so it's early. HD base T is if you're having wireless problems, as Grant said, go wired if that's an option.
Oh yeah, but I think that the idea for a lot of these conference rooms now, what everybody's trying to do is have it be something that people can just turn on and it just works. And the only place that I've seen that reliably work is with an Apple TV and Apple devices. Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California, here on the panel. After the chip shortage and with newer, faster chips, could you see, quote, noise assist being added to mixers in the future? I'd love to see that as a common effect like compressors, gates, and so forth in the future.
Go, Jason.
Boy, I wish, but I think if noise assist was easy, it would have been done already. And, frequently it would be common prior to the chip shortage. There are really only a few things that do this even remotely as well, the Cedar Box and, the very high-end things. But, boy, I wish.
You go, Bill.
Exactly what Jason is saying. For a long time, for probably 10 years, Cedar was really the only serious game in town for doing live and or post-process noise assist in a way that algorithmically figured out what was noise, what was signaled, and removed one from the other. Now that the other company has done something similar with noise assist, the branded product, it's understood, but I don't think it's simple, and I think there is some not copyright and not patent, because obviously that, but it's a heavy lift to reverse engineer that complexity and put it into a new product without getting into copyright or patent trouble. So I think it's going to take a while before that becomes just a simple plug-in that you can toss on everything.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm going to miss the chip shortage when it's over. I've decided to really lean into it. I use it as an excuse for almost everything these days.
Yeah, exactly. Why is this report late? A chip shortage. I mean, we just didn't.
Can you mow the lawn? No, I can't. There's a chip shortage.
Why?
Stuff like that.
Exactly. Why were you speeding? Chip shortage. I have to drive faster. It's really hard. Like, this is a really hard problem. Yamaha has its own, noise reduction program. A lot of folks have some version of a noise reduction. It's just that the only two that are really usable are Cedar and sound devices. I do think it will end up in mixers, but I think that those mixers will sound a lot like Calrec, Allen and Heath, Digico, because those are the companies that are owned by the same company that now owns sound devices. So I have a feeling that Noise Assist is going to find itself into mixers. It's just not going to find itself into the mixers that most of us have. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, the implementation of plugins and stuff like that onto mixers. If we're talking about the future, the expansion of that would be great, and seeing something like Isotope or something running live on a console would be great. Right now, it's somewhat limited to having a separate CPU and computer, basically with like waves or something like that. But that would be great to see third-party implementation into kind of household digital mixers.
Yeah. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I think that like all technologies, stuff increases and gets faster, and I think over time that will be a thing. It just will take a little bit, to hit the high-end mixers and then work its way down. But yeah, it takes processing. At least that's my understanding. Is the bottleneck is the processing.
Bill, real quick.
Yeah, I was just going to say that algorithmically, Apple has just added a voice enhance module into Final Cut. Now, that's not real-time mixing, so it's a slightly different thing. But you can tell they're working on removing noise and voice and separating them.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that can do it in post. Synaptic and Isotope and everyone else. It's the real-time. It's hard. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says the Shure SCM820 can be ordered with terminal block connectors along with Dante and DB25 connectivity. What advantages would terminal block connectors have for audio versus conventional connectors? Wouldn't it be harder to terminate them?
It's actually easier to terminate them, and also it is they're smaller, so you can pack a lot more signal into a smaller package. And terminal blocks are pretty common for a lot of installed audio systems. Next question.
Chris Fenwick, Emeryville, California, who's here on the panel. Lex Luthor mode at the Container Store. Please let me explain. I think I found your makeup bag. Chris.
Go ahead, Chris.
So first of all, Alex, I think this is your makeup bag here at the Container Store.
Yep.
$6.49. A lot of people watch this show, and I'm noticing that this thing is $6.49. But right below here it says or four payments of $1.62.
Finance your makeup bag.
Do the math. You can actually get it cheaper if you make the 4 payments. Now, what we need to do is we need to examine what their return policy is. Because if you have a walk-in return policy and we can get them for, we're 1 penny per transaction.
How to cottage industry
times a million or a billion. This adds up. There's our money-making scheme.
Let's all
right
conspire to buy makeup bags. All right. All right. Next question.
Makeup bag arbitrage. Who would have guessed? Deborah Woodfork in Washington, D.C. Has anyone used the new session branding in Zoom webinars? General thoughts?
Go ahead, Jason.
I have maybe once or twice at the insistence of my clients. My hatred for virtual backgrounds persists into whatever you do with them. That's my main general feeling.
So the session branding is that it's building a virtual background. I don't know. I don't even know what it is.
So it's taking virtual background and being able to paint it back for, a 2-up. It's just the same bad keying with, virtual background behind.
Amazing. All right. Next question.
Michael Vospin of Woodstock, Georgia says video podcast or YouTube channel or both.
Go ahead, Sky.
Again, think of your location as a place you're telling people to go. And then what are the advantages of going to that location? And also the confusion if you tell people they can go at multiple locations. So again, for me anyway, YouTube is a location that once upon a time you could monetize. Not so much anymore, but again, I used to pay for storage and like Vimeo or something like that, and then I'd have to drive people to that link. So there's advantages to both. The advice would be choose one and drive all your people to that one.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, you got to host your video podcast somewhere. Most people today use YouTube to do that. I would also suggest whatever you decide to do, give yourself a year, like MKBHD says 100 videos, right? Before he really got to his rhythm. So you have to go for a long time and consistently before you have any traction.
Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
If your primary discoverability, if discoverability is your primary goal, probably YouTube is better because it's still the second biggest search engine on the planet. If it's something else like quality perception, then maybe that's not the right place for you.
Next question.
Eric Nathan in Bellingham, Washington. I want to bring a mixer into an ATEM Mini Extreme. Is there a low-cost option?
Go ahead, Noah.
So in order of priority, USB interface is the best, right? Because you go straight to digital. Second would be embedded through HDMI through either the camera or another device. And then last resort would be the 1/8 inch in.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Nope, that answer was perfect.
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same, and I use an SDI to HDMI converter because it has TRS inputs that'll embed the audio into it, and that works great. But of course, that's not a low cost option. Low cost option is the 1/8 inch jack, but that's not the best option.
Yeah, you just have to be, if you use the 1/8 inch jack, I've seen people do it successfully. It's just, you really have to be careful of getting your gain stages perfect and testing everything out and trying, and just, it's very easy. And then it should be a very short cable. It is the kind of the most amazing oversight of these little switchers, which are very, very powerful. And in addition to giving me a whole bunch of buttons for transitions I would never use, why do I need? There's the funny thing about the ATEM in general that I've noticed with the Extreme is that there are, I don't know, is there 150 buttons on the front of this thing, or 100 buttons on the front of them? And I use like 4. And I don't know anybody else that uses any of those buttons anyway. Like, as soon as you need to do that, you go into software. So you have all these buttons. That's cool, kind of. And then but then we don't get the little mini XLRs is what we want. Like mini XLRs with balanced input would be life changing for these little mixers, and somehow we didn't get those. Go ahead, Chris.
Chip shortage.
Maybe. Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. Has anyone used birddog's Dante-enabled devices? Dan talked about some features earlier in the week, but I do not have any experience with it.
I have not. He talked about Dante?
I think so. He was saying that, at least there was a question from Mickey about a device that only had like 8x8, and he was asking why wasn't it more channels. So I was just curious if anybody has used that in their workflow, because I know in certain situations getting signals into Dante, via hardware would be really helpful, like with something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember that part of the conversation. Next question.
Matt Halverson in Brookings, South Dakota says, what's the best way to flip the image on my teleprompter so I can use it for Zoom calls and the people aren't backwards? And he's using a 2012 MacBook Pro.
Go ahead, Grant.
I'm guessing that the monitor that you have hasn't got a flip on it. Lots of the teleprompters have, and they can flip the image on it, so it's worth just double checking. Otherwise, it's not a low-cost solution either, but decimators fix our problems all the time, and you can flip the image in a decimator, and that also helps because you could loop it out to somewhere else, and it gives you more options. But otherwise, there's some software that you can do, but it really doesn't work well for Zoom and things like that. It'd be more about changing text around, but not doing that full display. At least I haven't seen that.
Good, Bill, real quick.
Yeah, I use a Lilliput monitor, and it has flip built in. So just look for image flip in the monitor specs if you want that.
Jesse, real quick.
OBS and virtual camera. You can flip and twist and do all kinds of stuff with OBS.
It'll be a little bit of latency, but yeah, absolutely. If you can go back, since you have a 2012, and you go back and if you can find pixel conduit, it's one node. We'll just flip it and stick it out the HDMI. It probably would work with an older OS as well. Next question.
Jacob Goodnight in Indianapolis, Indiana. Up next, Chris Fenwick. Can you share how you got clean 720p out of Teams without using NDI?
Yes.
I didn't raise my hand. Sorry. No.
He's not telling you.
So here's what you do. Number one, you have to pin one person per computer. So you pin the person. Then you have to enter into full screen mode, and you can do that through a pull down menu. There's also a way to do it if you click on the 3 little dots and you go into full screen mode. Then you have to stop touching your mouse. It's a total, gotcha, because if you bump the mouse or bump the table, everything will pop back up. The little toolbar will pop up. The stuff across the bottom will pop up. You can run the mouse to another screen, but it's dangerous.
Grant, real quick.
Yeah, there's a shortcut. So it's the Konami code, and so you just have to go up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right, BA, and then it'll do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Really
real quick.
easy.
Yes, ABBA start. But here's the problem. You can't say that. Even after all those things, you still are not guaranteed any sort of output because inconsistency.
By the way, this is one reason that with some of the things that I've done, I use a trackball because it's harder to bounce. It's harder to bump it and get the interface to pop back up, or have it vibrate on a table or something like when you're beating the table because something went wrong. Next question. Not that I've ever done that.
JHB in New York is up next. He says, on a Windows computer with 3 display monitors attached, is there any way to send individual Zoom participants to each monitor, similar to Zoom ISO on a Mac? Thanks.
I think that you would need Zoom Room to do that. I think Zoom Room would allow you to do that, but you would need a Zoom Room to send them to each one. Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles comes up next. Robert says, not to beat a dead horse, but why is the new Hyperdeck unit sensitive to playback formats? That is, the need for the metadata to be the same on all the files.
Go ahead, Chris.
195.
195.
Oh,
Nice.
I'm sorry. That's how many buttons are on the ATEM Extreme.
Oh, is it really? Is it 195? I knew it was somewhere in there. There's a lot of buttons in there, and I used 4, and I don't know anybody else that uses that much more. There's just tons of things there that we don't
I
need.
used 6 of them.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. And we all probably use the same ones.
I built a spreadsheet and everything to figure it out. It was complicated.
I expect a full report later. So this is not new. It's always been with the Hyperdeck, and the Hyperdeck, and it actually protects you from yourself. Those of us who've done production for a long time, you're used to conforming. When you put it on an EVS, when you put it on any kind of big playback system, you want to conform it to force it to be something so that it's not. It just makes it much more stable because it's not jumping from one format to another. And so, and essentially the Hyperdeck treats all of the files like one big file. And so that's why it happens is it encodes them all sitting there and it just treats them all as one long playout. And that creates a smooth playout. It's a stable, predictable playout. And that's why the Hyperdecks do it. And that's why they've done it since day one. And so there's nothing new about this. It's just, that's the way that you need to do it. And it's, from my perspective, making sure that they're all the same format. Again, coming from, working in TV for the last 30 years, I just call it adulting. Like all your stuff has to come in and be put into the same format so that it plays back the way you expect it. Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles up next. Why is the Zoom platform still considered a security risk compared to other platforms?
Go ahead, Chris.
It's very interesting, Robert, that this question comes right after the last question because it's basically the same thing. The Hyperdeck wants to always have the same video file, and IT people only want to deal with as little, a few things as possible. It's about conforming. If people were more interested in doing their job than saving their job, many things would happen better. Yeah. But they're afraid of losing their job. Nobody ever got fired by buying Microsoft.
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, one time I came home at lunchtime and my front door was wide open and the security door was wide open. And I asked my wife, "Did you close the door?" She's like, "Oh no, I might not have." This is exactly the same with Zoom in that they've got locks and they've got lots of security options, but you have to enable them and use them. Mm-hmm. And part of the issue was, a couple of years ago, was that people posted their links on Twitter and Facebook and everything. They were all totally open. And people were like, "Oh, Zoom is so insecure because you can just click a link." And of course, all these bots and people was just able to search for Zoom on Twitter and go jump into these meetings because people just left the doors wide open.
Right.
Zoom has done a few things recently where they're like requiring, "Oh no, you need to use a password or you need to have waiting room enabled," and they're trying to make it clear and teach people how to do it. I think it's gotten way better just by people not posting their links everywhere on social media.
There you go, Sky.
Well, and I think yesterday's conversation, Alex, about marketing and perception and the concept of Zoom is early days. They had the wide open policy as Grant was saying, but
it was allowing people to have wide open policies. You know,
Yes.
like it was just, you know, it was not that, you know, and we had, this is in 2020, we did an event with, you know, military leaders and all kinds of folks in the EU and everything else. And when we were like, okay, we're going to turn all the dials up. And they're like, whoa, that'll be way too hard for people to get in. And we were like, okay, well, you said you wanted it to be secure. And so you can definitely, you know, turn all the dials up in Zoom and make it as secure as you want. As Grant said, and as Sky has mentioned, in the
marketing and perception yesterday with regards to where is OH going, you want to go out well, and at this point we're keeping it tight, and so that's where there might be a marketing department that's not so friendly towards Zoom, so they might be spreading, you know, propaganda.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that what the security that I use the most, just to leave it with this, is that I use waiting room. I turn everything else off. And the reason for that is that then people don't have to use this stupid password. You know, like the problem with Zoom is when you create an event and you include Zoom, what it creates is join Zoom, the little button still requires someone to type a password in. So it means that they hit it, they get it, they open it up, and now they got to go find that password because it's not the embedded link that's connected to that button. And so as a result, I do everything with waiting rooms. Just because it's really easy for people to jump in, and then I get to also, no one surprises me. I like the fact that I'm getting ready and I see someone, like, oh, I'll get there in a second, rather than them just appearing in my meeting. Next question.
Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin is up next. He says, storing video on a server, talking head interview, minimal motion, no need to key. Currently in 4K ProRes 422 HQ. Is there a better efficiency codec to reduce storage footprint without sacrificing future edit options?
No.
Oh yeah, there's tons of codec options out there. It really depends on what your final destination is. Like if you need to retain 12-bit or 10-bit imagery, that kind of stuff. But for me, ProRes Proxy has been awesome, but that's only after you've done the color correction. And I know that's probably offensive to some, you know, serious editors here. I see it on Alex's face. And I would even go as far as say H.265, and I'll duck and cover from the fire coming at me.
This is by the way, this is when I go like this, we joke because in Africa, you know, in the chimpanzees, this is their form of aggression is when they go. Anyway, go ahead, Jason.
I was about to say, yeah, I would never use a proxy codec, but the short answer is no. Barring the audio channels, you know, dropping the silent channels, I wouldn't do anything to it.
There's a huge drop off from HQ to everything else. So you just need to know that we consider HQ kind of our base. If we're doing like stuff that we're just going to deliver and we're never going to look at again, LT will go to. I really feel like proxy is like, I don't care about this video anymore. You know, like it's, you know, it really beats the video up pretty badly. There's nothing left there. You can't do any color correction. You can't do anything else. Same with H.264 and H.265. These are delivery formats. Proxy was never designed as a mezzanine format. It was designed as a delivery and review format. I would, the problem is that you won't have any significant area to do any color correction after you drop below HQ, in my opinion. Like that's where all your bits are. And as soon as you drop below that, things get pretty rough. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, that's why my asterisk is post color correction.
Yeah. I guess my experience is when you're storing things that you may use in the future, you're never post color correction. Like you never actually are done with it. And so if you're storing you always want to capture at the highest that you can capture and try to keep it there, some version of it, and just put it on a spinning drive somewhere. Spinning drives are not expensive. We buy lots of them. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next. The Japanese-owned arcade chain Round One has arcade machines imported from Japan connected to the same network as their Japanese arcades, for example, for sharing high scores. How would they get around region locks in the software?
Jason, really quick.
My guess is that they imported them, and then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yep, I think so. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany is up next, and he says, has anyone worked with a USB pan-tilt zoom camera that can be attached directly to the computer for streaming reasons? I'm looking for a not-too-expensive solution like the one from Logitech, their PTZ Pro 2.
The one that I haven't used PTZs. We've only used the Logitechs work pretty well. The HadoCam also works, so it's a pan and scan inside of the 4K frame, and I think that one works pretty well as well. Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California says, if you started over in life, your age reset to 20 and kept your memories and experiences, would you pursue what you do now or would you do something else?
It's a great long question, but we're not going to have time for it. Go ahead, Grant.
I was going to say it'd be a great Sunday question, that one, but
you should ask that again on Sunday.
I totally think that I would start Zoom back then.
It'd be very hard. When I was 20.
When it was.
Yeah, exactly. When I was 20, we were still in like 160 by 120. Yeah. All right. Ask that again on Sunday. We'll just dig into that one for a while. Yeah. Next question.
Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois says, Chris Fenwick needs a second hour for a philosophical discussion of all the useless spreadsheets he has created.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. Let's do that today in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Next question.
Game.
Next question. Last one.
Next one comes from Tom Ferguson in Phoenix, Arizona. Okay, the hyperdecks require consistent format videos. What software do you use to transcode video into said consistent format?
Very quickly, John.
So next year is the 20th anniversary of Adobe Media Encoder, and I'm stuck on that platform. I have Compressor too. I just better in Media Encoder.
It's not. Go ahead, Jason.
Compressor.
No, I said I was better. I was better, not
okay.
Better.
Okay, yeah.
Compressor or Edit Ready. It just depends on what it'll tolerate.
Compressor is on a Mac, especially the M1s, is so much faster than everything else. It's not even a discussion anymore. I mean, if you have a Mac, use Compressor. All right. We are now changing subjects. We are jumping in. We're going to Monterey, California, with Immersive Design Studios, and they have a pretty slick little setup that they put together with the help of the Monterey Convention Center as well as John Ilson. And are you there? Can you guys hear us in Monterey?
Hear you loud and clear, Alex, and the Office Hours team. And I take it you're hearing me well enough.
We do hear you. Can you give us a little introduction, John? Yeah,
I'm going to start with a little introduction saying welcome to the Monterey Convention Center and the Immersive Design Studios. And with me here are Kora and Thomas, and they are the co-founders of Immersive Design Studios. You've been in this business for over 20 years?
Something like that. Yeah, we started off as artists. The company is about 7 years old now, but we started as an art collective. We developed interactive installations for museums, did a lot of commissions, and then ultimately we took all our experience and turned it into a company, and that's called Immersive Design Studios.
And we started building the Canvas platform that we're using currently to do the presentation.
And you guys are doing double duty today, right? You're in Las Vegas at one of your other installations. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a courtesy visit to do to our large client here in Vegas. They're having one of their big events. This is a client who has been able to put together events with 70, 80, 160,000 participants in Zoom through our Canvas platform, and they build a purposely custom-built studio basically to support our software with an entire installation. That's, I think, the biggest one that I know of at this stage.
Well, you're very calm with another show going on, but let's bring in the other partner in this project, Doug Phillips, who's the executive director of the Monterey Convention Center. As they say in Price is Right. Come on down, Doug.
All right. So explain what we're looking at here, because this is quite a merge of things here. So we have. Yeah, explain. Well, who is where?
Give us 1 second. We'll actually pull the curtain back and let you see behind the scenes. But yes, we have Doug. We have Doug on stage on the studio. We have Kora and Thomas in Las Vegas, and you have me at a green screen being put in through the engine. There we go. Hi, Doug. So,
hey,
Doug,
John, how you doing?
You've been here
Kora?
at the convention center.
Yeah, Kora, Thomas, good to see you. We're excited. This is a pretty amazing facility. I just want to say welcome to everybody, the audience, to Canvas Studio at Monterey.
Okay, and so we have another person we want to bring onto the stage, and that's Michael Slade. Michael's been, Michael's the person who introduced me to Office Hours. So Michael, are you going to come on?
So what I would suggest for this is, John, I'm going to go to the theater to meet with Michael. Oh, there he is. Oh. He'll come on.
There we go.
Hello, here we are. There we are.
Yeah, hi, Michael.
So now, Alex, this will give us sort of the picture that you were asking, what's going on. Michael's coming in from a Zoom call. Allison, Kora and Thomas are in Las Vegas. Doug is in the studio. And now should we show the magic?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's go to it. So you're going to now center screen, come to me in a moment.
So maybe what we can show a little bit is, all right, you want to show behind the scenes.
So Alex, I don't know if this is what you wanted to know, but I was here on the green screen, and it's this iPad right here that's controlling the show. And you may see the line of computers and monitors, but I think an important thing to notice here, there's no chairs. It's a total crew running. This is Chris. Hello, Chris. Can you say hello? So I'm going to walk onto the stage for a second and let you see how it works at this end. And I didn't go to camera operator school, so I may not be as smooth. But now I'm showing Doug in the studio with a sort of mirror effect. So Doug, how are you doing?
I'm good, John. How are you doing?
Okay, so now I'm going to go forward and let Doug see what he gets to look at. So when Doug is on stage, and this is, I think, one of the exciting things, is that he gets the impact of the audience. Right now, we're seeing the show. We're seeing up there, we could have prompter notes, but it could be all the thousands of Zoomers who are watching this session. And so I'm going to turn it back to Kora and Thomas so they could answer any questions that, Alex, you want to throw at him.
Yeah, and for those watching, if you have questions about Canvas, go ahead and start throwing those in there. So can you tell us a little bit about, so we're in Monterey here, and how are you coming in? Are you using Zoom to come in for the two windows that are there right now, or are you using something else?
Yeah, sure. Zoom is the platform that we use to integrate into Canvas. It's a very deep integration, so we have now a current custom Zoom app that we build based on the SDK. Unlike the regular Zoom client, we're able to do things well beyond grabbing a desktop and pushing it into another environment. I think what's really important is that we're combining real-time video transport together with virtual production, because in the background you have Unreal Engine running on screen that shows all these environments. And really important about the platform is that connecting Zoom for us was very easy because we're a very open platform. We've integrated many other technologies into Canvas, including AI, streaming. It does full multi-display server management and media management, whatever you can possibly imagine, from virtual production all the way to metaverse-ready production technologies, 360 video, you name it. There's basically almost no format that we don't support. But really important is that the platform is built with a user experience in mind. And so when we show the iPad, it's not a deterministic interface. So it can be programmed on the fly. And so can your live presentation be programmed without needing to write any code directly from the iPad with a huge amount of facilitation to the user. So it is almost like a very easy app to use. But in fact, underneath, there's a very complex multi-server, cloud-capable as much as on-premise capable technology. And all of that is blended together to disappear in the background and make the experiences come to the foreground.
And so everything we're seeing right now on the screen is all Unreal, or your version of Unreal. You've taken Unreal as the engine, but you've built a lot of your own, stuff on top of it.
Canvas is a render engine. So Unreal Engine is basically just a layer in our server. Yep. And then for Unreal Engine, we build, of course, our own plugins. And so Canvas, which runs on a dedicated server, is layering in Unreal Engine in multi 4K.
Right.
But also the full media pipeline of Canvas is built into a plugin into Unreal. So I can bring anything to the front end. I can bring Canvas to the front end and play any video like you would see in any media production. But we can do the same inside the 3D environment. Maybe the best thing to show for us here is the slide of LCS, where we have all those Zoom people inside. So if we could do that in a few moments. So here we are. This is the canvas running in the cloud, running an entire virtual studio. Here in the virtual studio, we can build everything the canvas do inside Unreal Engine with virtual production. So you don't have a deterministic outcome with Canvas where you need a studio that is physical. In fact, for Ride Games, which was streamed to 5 million viewers, we had no studio whatsoever. All of this was running from the cloud, and they were green screening themselves in from home because nobody could actually go to work at that point in LA when COVID was restricting people actually to go to their offices. So what you see in the studio here, we can run entirely in the cloud at the same resolutions with this even higher capacity of participation.
That's great. And I think we have some questions starting to stack up. So we're gonna go ahead and throw it to the first question.
Our first one comes from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, the resolution and smoothness of the image are mind-blowing. What's the glue that's tying all the components involved? Are you using Isidore or a similar visual programming environment?
It's Canvas.
Yeah, it's all Canvas. So we understand how to, maybe I'm going to go back a little bit. Canvas started as a image processing solution that was GPU based. And we ran the highest bandwidth ingest and output ever done on a computer with the help of NVIDIA and Quadro cards, and of course capture cards at the time. Then we understood how to create multi-instances of game engines to glue them together to create super high resolution outcomes. So we can run multiple times on Unreal Engine within the same instance and keep them all in sync and create a 12K output on the screen behind you with full 60 frames per second without dropping a single frame. And that's been a benchmark that we absolutely wanted from the get-go, because if you go below that, you lose the fluidity that we all know in real life. And when that is taken away, the magic of a virtual production is compromised, and you start to feel the technology struggling, which is not something we want.
Let's go to the next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California. Up next, he says, are there any adjustments that could be made to John's flat 2D image when moving in the virtual environment? The parallax effect distracted my attention.
Yes. So we have full control over the green screen integration. And actually, Kora is actually calling the show here from Vegas. She's actually controlling Canvas right from where we sit here. She's doing all the changes in the screen and whatnot. To your point, yes. Can we do camera tracking? Yes. Can we bring the subject into, let's say, a higher degree of green screen integration? All these things are absolutely possible. Why is it possible? It's because we're able to integrate just about any format or any data stream that you could possibly imagine, from OSC to DMX to any HTTPS queue that you would want to send or receive from Canvas. Fully bi-directional, we can take in those metrics and then display them as you would suggest to facilitate even better green screen integrations. Yeah. Absolutely.
And maybe if I can give a little bit a different answer also to the question. Canvas was built and designed with in mind real-time and high flexibility for enterprise users. So the idea is that this is not for specialized broadcast studios. This is really a product that is for people who have to make a show, have to improvise on the fly, who can walk in at any given moment and don't need a crew of 20 people around them to do a presentation, which we're looking at now. So the whole idea was to make something that is really super user-friendly with an iPad. The speaker can use the iPad and just do the show, or can have one assistant and who controls everything from the back. And everything can be also supported remotely. So as Thomas was saying, I'm here on my laptop controlling what the presentation looks like. I'm doing the same for Vegas at the same time. And so do a lot of our team. And the idea is that, somebody like Doug, and this is like a compliment, Doug has been in this space and he knows what it is to put on these shows, but I think he Doug, and I'll let you speak a bit to this. I think you walk in daily into the studio and just play around with the full system, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the highlight of my morning when I come in and grab the iPad and just come into the studio and start.
Hi, Doug.
Hey, John, and start playing with the demo settings.
Well, Doug, you must have been a good gamer because you're really pretty good on that iPad when you're controlling it. So,
well, I don't know. Maybe back in the day, I'm like I said, getting a little too old now. But this is really just for me. It's kind of revitalized my concept of our meetings industry and where it's going and where it's going to go. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, what we've done here in Monterey. This was all, we can all blame COVID because that's really how it started. John has heard me tell the story that for me, I was like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, walking through an empty building for 4 months and no business and trying to figure out a way to get some business into the conference center. And that's when I was introduced to Thomas and Kora, and we just took off from there. It's just been a great partnership, and we're excited to see where we're going the next phase. It does, for us anyway, it does create some issues in the sense that the physical space that this studio is taking up is in high demand now that COVID is gone and people want to get back to meetings. So we're looking at some solutions that would give us the physical space, but still give us the technology that Canvas brings to the table. So pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it's really important that I really think Monterey is in the front end of the convention center is really in the front end of the future of all of this, because what we're seeing with events that we're working on is event after event after event is getting lower attendance than expected. So there's they're anywhere from 30 to 50% less, sometimes 70% less of the number of people that said they were going to come or showing up. First, that was COVID. Now it's dealing with the hotel and flight costs are astronomical, and I think that's probably not going to go away anytime soon. And I think that more and more people that we're talking to are trying to figure out a way, well, how do I get past that? How do I, and I think being able to figure out a way to create that event experience without making everybody actually show up in one specific place, whether that's them going to a local venue or them going to or watching at home. I think those two things are, and this is a perfect platform for that type of thing. It's really interesting. Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California, back with us. He's wondering what the physical size, the practical size of the stage is that you're working with.
Well, it can be any size.
Can walk to the screen.
Yeah, if you go up to the screen, Doug, they can get a sense of size all the way to the back, the other side. Yeah. So it's really big. This is actually the same size of screen that we built for Tony Robbins when he did his first UPW with our platform. So as you know, Tony Robbins was the first real user of our solution about 18 months ago when we brought this kind of solution to life for him to do the 25,000 attendees UPW. And then from there, it became, I would say, very popular. And then we built many, many more for private companies and individuals who want to stage themselves. So 50 foot is big because that's what Tony Robbins needed. And Doug is almost as big as Tony Robbins. We've done smaller ones, but we've also seen that any size, any shape, they don't need to be circular. Canvas, by the way, here does all the warp and blend on the projectors. It's for us, as we can do projection mapping or drive any screen and any resolution, by the way, there's no limit to what you can output. From 4K all the way to 38K, which is what we run here in Vegas on LED walls that are 60 foot to 50 foot, 4 LED walls in a circle, and in about, I think, 12,000 pixels. So 3 times 4K front and back, and then 2 times 4K left and right, and all driven natively pixel by pixel, so no upscaling or anything. So it's a scalable platform. Yeah.
I have a short video, if Kora can bring it up, that shows the studio you're working in Las Vegas.
Sure, let me know.
Which would help people to get an idea if you can. There we go.
I'll bring it up. Here it is. Okay.
So this is, so Monterey is using projectors. In Las Vegas, they're using LEDs. And one of the unique features here is the ability to pull back half of the LED screens so that you can enable an in-person audience. It's quite an extraordinary renovation or change there. Anyway, so that's just a short video to give you an idea of what they're working with in Las Vegas.
And what's interesting is that Michael's been writing some articles about the whole digital first movement. And, the challenge that everyone's having, we're having, is how do you explain what digital first is? How do you decide what best practices are? To me, this is the best practice. We have people from San Francisco, from Las Vegas, but you could see the screens. Those could be our 20,000 viewers. We have Doug on stage. We have me physically here on the set, but I could be virtually here. I could be anywhere, but there's a green screen. So the flexibility here is incredible.
No, absolutely. And I think that a lot of us, before we call them digital events, we really were calling them centerless events, which is just that there's no one place that they need to be. And I think that whether this is happening in the cloud or happening in a physical space or a bit of both, going out to, again, individuals, I work on a lot of stuff where we're projecting to many venues at the same time. And so these are all things that I think are possible. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jesse Mills in the San Francisco Bay Area. Could someone transmit a live 360 video into this Unreal Engine so that the LED walls are created based on live spaces outside of this studio?
What do you want?
The conference center, the live video, 360 video. We're going to play one for you. Yes, we can. And it's not Unreal who's playing it, it's Canvas. So the way that we work with this video, by example, runs in a layer of Canvas. Unreal Engine is another layer. So when you see a 3D scene, we just run Unreal Engine as one of the input-output layers that are there. By the way, this 360 shot is done with a $1,000 camera. So if you do this with a serious rig where you have, let's say, a couple of 4K dedicated red cameras with the proper output, we can do the dewarping of that in Canvas in real time.
Yeah.
So yes,
Doug,
you can.
Doug, could you go down
full
the
360s?
Doug, could you go down the mall there and get me a coffee?
Yeah, sure, I'll go.
Okay, thank you.
I'm the wrong way. Coffee shop's over here.
The other direction, yeah.
And of course, even in this setting, we can have people, and we can have all of the same capabilities that we have, because Canvas is a gigantic compositor, right? It can run any content of any origin, WebRTC, you name it. So everything that exists in digital format, we can natively play back. We can show 100 NDI streams simultaneously. There's basically no format that we don't support. We're currently working on Simply 2110, which will be included sometime in the future as another option. But just about every digital format is integrated, from real-time engines to 360 video to multi-4K video to WebRTC streaming, input and output, NDI with Canvas, input and output plugins for Unreal. It's an entire suite of options that you have at your fingertips, so you can build outcomes and you don't have to think about the technology.
Yeah, I'm really interested in when you look at the 360 because you could literally just go over and point at things on the screen. There is this power of it being all around you, and I think that all you need now is to go to East Africa and shoot something, and you can get as close to the veldt as any of us have seen. I don't know if for those of you who know the
and also maybe one more thing I want to add, Alex, is that we're controlling the PowerPoint. So I'm controlling the camera views,
right,
the PowerPoints, the slides, the 3D in, the 3D, the video in, so the multi-layer that Thomas is talking about,
Right.
All that is integrated in the software platform. It can also be all controlled from one single device, the iPad.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really important. I think that the interface is important in the sense that as someone who does a lot of presentations, I don't want to be thinking about the technical ends of things. I just want the buttons where I need them to be as I'm working through them, and just be able to tap what I need, because otherwise that creates these little breaks in my conscious, in my attention that the audience will feel. So it's really powerful. Next question.
I think also that from the presenter's standpoint, having that huge view of whatever is relevant to them, as opposed to being in an artificial environment where you have to explain, well, this monitor means this and this means this. It provides a context for the presenter that if you have a dynamic presenter, they'll just kill in this environment because they can interact in a way they could not be as comfortable, I don't think, otherwise.
No, I agree. Absolutely. Next question.
Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart is up with this one. Can you move a camera with the background? The static camera is a little nausea creating when the background moves.
So can you track it together, track the two of them together?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. So when we have larger presentations, and unfortunately we didn't have the time to find our Steadicam operator, usually a setup like this is run with a boom, so that there's a flying camera overhead. You have at least 1 or 2 Steadicams, and then you have 4 cameras in general that you choose from. So then it becomes extremely dynamic. You have the ability to create the intimacy with the host, where you literally walk around them and you have that shoulder shot. Then, of course, you can have the wide shot, you can have the close-up. And when you're going to look at, in fact, there's a show going on right now at Mora Studios. There's going to be many, many more because they're actually fully booked for the next 2 months. But whenever you have a chance to see one of those productions, think of it as being closer to the subject. I think that's what we really do. And from the presenter's perspective, what we see that is very successful is that you have a presenter that is in an immersive environment. So they are experiencing something. And that ultimately translates to the audience. And what's really important about live is that you have a feedback loop between presenter or performer and the audience. Here, we don't have the cheering, we don't have the clapping, but we create another kind of feedback loop that actually creates that authenticity and the intimacy that you need to get a successful bi-directional event. And that's really key to the success of the platform. I mean, the technology has a lot of ingredients to play with. It has a ton of thinking around creating flexibility and openness and whatnot. But in the end, what it's really about is the experience. And creating an experience for the host is actually been our first and foremost objective. So he can be in a position to own the high ground and not to feel that he's struggling with a technology transport or depraved from experience, and start showing that in his facial expression and his body language. When they're in the studio, they actually become their best selves. And with this feedback loop, the audience feels this goosebump moment, which you have in an actual live event. And I think that's the real purpose of the platform, is to facilitate these outcomes.
Next question.
Thomas,
go ahead.
You actually have created art here. Do you want to show a little bit of the violinists and the dancers?
Sure. So there's been a lot of use cases in the studio. So here we have someone from Adobe doing his retirement event with a lot of creativity and elements that come into play. But Kora was closer to this production.
Yeah. We'll let it play with. I'm going to explain that.
Now, was that Russell Brown?
To explain this, so what we were seeing is that there was a musician in the space, physically, playing the violin, playing with himself virtually on the screen. So they were doing a duet of music. It was very, creative and not a big concert, and a very informal. And this video was taken while they were rehearsing. But the idea that, the real and the virtual world can start blending together in a very creative way. And we can have these augmented concerts, augmented presentations, where a person is locally somewhere and plays with another person in a virtual space or with themselves pre-recorded, and suddenly you can create this this multi-dimensional environment, which I think Thomas and I have been always exploring a lot of these ideas in our artistic work. We're now building a platform so this can be used in a more enterprise environment or an environment where it's used for, presentations. But those ideas of really bringing the real and the virtual together is something we've been working on all our lives for 20 years. And Canvas is just a tool to do that. And we wanted to make sure there is a tool to be able to do that, because we struggled a lot initially with trying to bring together 3D and then video and live and beautiful screen imagery, because it would kill, if your resolution is not good or your performance is not great, it kills the whole experience.
Next question.
Kora, you had told me about the work that was done for Charity Water. And I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit. And I'd like to hear from Doug. He was, I understand, at that event and could maybe speak briefly to what it was like to be there and how it turned out.
You want me to jump in, Kora? Thomas? Well, first of all, one of the things I'd like to say is it's not just events like Charity Water, which was a fabulous one, but we've also hosted a number of our clients and through hybrid events. And somebody asked earlier about the size of the studio. Well, we can get 100 people in the studio live with a keynote speaker in studio, and then as many speakers as you would like virtual. In this particular case, this is just one example we use with one of our repeat clients. We had 5 virtual presenters. They were from Boston to LA and points in between, and they were able to engage with the audience that was here live, as well as the keynote speaker that was here behind a podium live, and it was seamless. I mean, it was just amazing. You could really see the footprint that this was creating. And what was even more fascinating for me is when I would walk out into the lobby of this ballroom, and you'd see people on their laptops and their iPads that were actually watching what was going on in the studio out in the lobby. So you had 80 people in studio asking questions, participating with these virtual presenters, and then you had people that were in the lobby so that were doing the same thing. It just was, to me, it was just fascinating how the reach that this has. Charity Water was just, it was kind of mind-blowing to me. I'd never been in a studio production like that. It was fascinating to see the interaction that I think it was the owner, CEO of the company had with the virtual audience. And that, I think, is what stimulated such a tremendous I'm going to say revenue stream for Charity Water. Well, I think it was something like, within an hour and a half, they had raised some $4.5 million in revenues. And just to give you an idea of the impact that has. So, I could go on. We've used it with a few of our clients. And it was really, for me, it was about how do we integrate this studio into their production, their needs. What are they looking for? And we've been able to do that in a number of different cases. And
I think that one thing that the Charity Water speaks to is because Scott Harrison is a force to be reckoned with, and it is. He's as close to, for as far as raising money, he's probably as close to Tony Robbins as you can get as far as telling a story and selling. We've streamed a couple of his things in the past, and the interesting thing there is it is a different experience, and I think that we do have to look at the kind of speakers who are really going to, the speakers and organizations that really get it and embrace the platform to make that work. Let's go to the next question.
Keith Harrison in London in the UK says, how is the use of Canvas changing the physical convention center business?
Go ahead. It's probably for you, Doug.
I can give it a quick hint, and then I want Doug to speak for it.
Okay, yeah.
And I can.
I'll let you go, Thomas. Have at it.
So I think reach is the word. I think convention centers will continue to thrive and to exist, but they will adapt and take advantage as well of the new possibilities that are out there. So a little bit like Kora said, we're a company that is trying to bring physical and digital together. We've been doing that for 20 years. Convention centers are physical meeting places. That's where all the physical go-to solutions have been building on. The new reality is that flying is expensive. Conventions are expensive. And digital has been seen as an opposed force to what we do in person. I don't believe that that is the future. I don't think either that successful digital solutions are opposed to what we live in the physical world. Merging them together, making them simultaneously engageable and successful is the future of human interaction. And I think that convention centers have an opportunity now to see that one and the other are not opposed forces. So digital and virtual, or in person or remotely participating, shouldn't be traded off as first class and second class ticket. We've proven through the many events, through the many experiences that people have had, the digital can be a first class experience, and that people who are in the room see something, but that the digital side of that doesn't need to be a full copy of that. It can actually be an extension of the physical. And so with doing so, we open doors to new layers of communication and human interaction for convention centers, and that's what they're all about. And I will leave the word to Doug to speak a word about how real that has resonated for you at the conference center.
Sure. Kora, you were about to say something too. Go ahead.
Yes.
Well, no, it's maybe moving the topic a little bit also in training the accessibility of, for example, convention center. You come together because there is somebody you want to see, or there are colleagues of yours that you've never met, or things like this. But I think the training aspect also of a convention is why a lot of people go to conventions. And I think if you can give access to that training to more people at the same time, for example, you have these unique speakers, presenters, skill sets. People have amazing skill sets, and who want to transmit that knowledge to a large crowd. I think you suddenly can do this in now. You have access to these people in a more, in a better. It's more accessible now, and it's not just watching a tutorial. You are there, you're present, you are participating. That presenter can call you up on the screen at any given moment. So you feel like, okay, I have to really pay attention here, because at any given moment, this person, could interact with me. I just wanted to say this, but Doug, please go ahead.
No, both Thomas and Kora, you nailed it. I think that's it. It's about the reach. It's about the footprint that our clients can have now. They can expand their. Our capacity here is about 2,000 people. That's max for one room. That's our largest ballroom. So we're a very small conference center. But the bottom line is that you can expand that 2,000 to 20,000 with the virtual component. Now, we've already tested the hybrid of this, and it's been extremely successful. The clients love it. I say, why can't we have the best of both worlds and integrate it so it's, like I said, it's seamless. It's hard to explain it unless you're actually physically here witnessing what's going on. To watch a presenter in studio with an audience, and then a live audience and other presenters that are virtual. So it's that best of both worlds. For me, I was really looking for something, a product that we could sell to our clients, because we had nothing. We were shut down. And so when we started down this path, didn't really know what to expect. We knew that we were giving up a lot of physical space for the studio, but it has evolved into not just the physical space that we've given up, and hopefully we can come with some solutions to that, but expanding beyond the physical space. We know that meetings will never go away, that people need to have that interaction, that networking, that, the handshakes and the hugs. That'll never go away. But now you can have that, I think, virtually as well. And people, people are very, what we're seeing here at the conference center right now is some groups are shying away from meetings. They want to meet virtual because they're still afraid of the pandemic, which I think we should be. And then, you've got other groups that they don't care, there's no masks, but so there's got to be, I think, something for everybody. You've got to be able to offer a product that can merge those two. So I'm really excited about it. I've been, since as I told Thomas and Kora when we started down this project, I would really wanted this to be a living laboratory of how do we go forward with the events business for the conference center. I don't want to be some white horse, what do they call it, a white elephant in 5 years. And I think that's if you don't embrace technology, that's where we're going to end up. A physical space that's just not going to be utilized.
You're not a white elephant. You're the white knight.
Let's see.
The problem.
John, where are you? John, you're somewhere.
I'm right here.
Let's jump to the next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle says, how many projectors are now being used per screen?
So in this particular case, we have 6 4K projectors. Three per screen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Next question.
Next one comes up from Jesse Mills in San Francisco. Could John be projected in 3D onto the in-person stage rather than integrated into the LED wall?
Yes.
Everybody wants the hologram.
Yes, that's a good point. In fact, if it's a 3D insertion or a sprite insertion or a green screen keying, we support any of that. So it just comes down to if the data stream can be delivered to us, we're able to integrate it. And
but onto the physical stage.
Onto the physical stage, yeah.
Hologram.
Of course, no, and that too we can do. So yes, if you have the camera tracking enabled, and you allow us to bring in this 3D video through whatever format that would be supporting it, definitely the camera tracking would allow you to augment the space inside the circle to bring in anybody that you think is relevant to that. And it's an interesting question because it is something that we will be unveiling very soon after this call, actually.
Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles has this question. Is the curved background screen real or virtual? Do you need a physical studio to create what we're seeing?
In fact, a very good question. The answer is no, you don't need a physical studio. We're able to fully virtualize that background as you suggest, where you have a composite where the physical floor underneath Doug's feet would extend into a virtual floor and then have the screen to become a virtual backdrop. It's a little bit more complex to build because, of course, you need quite a bit of green screen size to do that. But why do we do it the way it is done here? It is because this particular iteration of the Canvas experience was built for someone who said, I can't live without my audience. And that was Tony Robbins, right? So he said, I'll never do a virtual event in my life over my dead body. And then he became the king of virtual events when he saw that actually having 2,000, 3,000 people on screen where he can see into their living rooms is actually creating a huge, huge intimate setting. And we built an arena. It's basically an arena format where you have, thousands of people on the front row. And so that's why this is a physical iteration. This has been, I would say, our first version of what we built. It's now sitting in Monterey to explore how we can work with convention centers. And now what we've learned is that this iteration has created a lot of interesting formats, but we're going to build a purposeful one for the Monterey Convention Center, which is in design right now, which literally will not occupy any of the physical space whatsoever. So it will be fully integrated rather than taking over a room with a curved screen and speakers behind it.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is interested in how you're transporting audio within the Canvas system.
It's all Dante. So we do Dante input, output. I think that's the short of the long. Then in this particular setting, we have a full 360-degree Mayer setup with about 24 speakers and 12 subs in cardioid. So the speaker, the host, he's not hearing some thin, bad reproduced sound. In fact, the sound stage inside the screen, which is sonically transparent, the screen fabric is actually built with it's non-perforated, so we have phenomenal resolution on screen, as you can see. No moire, but the speakers behind are literally incredibly powerful and can create entire soundscapes. So those are X40s from Mayer with their large, I think it's LF900 subwoofers in cardioid, so there's no reflection from the walls, and we can create a soundscape around the speaker as to create an incredibly powerful experience for the speaker.
And I can say, having been in the studio, it makes me feel like when I'm in my home studio with good audio that I'm on a cheap little radio. The audio experience in the hall here is just incredible.
Next question.
Related to that, Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart says, it sounds like there's a lot of fan noise in the feed. How loud is it in the physical studio?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. When we installed these particular projectors, they are UDXs and they're quite noisy. We didn't have the luxury to have the chillers, which are the outboard cooling elements that you can place further away from anybody who's inside the screen. And why is that? It's because this original design, which we're now traveling because Tony Robbins is now using LED walls, was built for a studio that had incredibly high ceilings that were fully sound absorbing. So we didn't have any concern at the beginning of this design about the noise bleeding into the room because of the almost endless ceiling height that he had in the place that he erected this solution in the beginning. So the situation with the convention center is that the ceiling is incredibly close to the projectors, therefore reflecting some of the sound. And honestly, we didn't have the time or the budget to really go buy the extra chillers and remedy that. So for this particular setup, the studio has a noise floor, it is present, but in the end, the sound system is so powerful, you really start to get into the experience and actually get over the noise floor that you're experiencing.
Yeah, you don't even notice it, Thomas. That's as I'm standing here, it just kind of fades into the background because of the sound system.
On your side, you don't notice it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Next question.
JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia, California is up next. He has this question. What are the bandwidth requirements of maintaining a 20,000 capacity advertised?
Yeah, well, very good question. So 20,000 people, you'd be having 300 megs up and down. So that is actually very good news for anybody who wants to start thinking about doing this at scale. 300 megs up and down is what we've seen as the highest use for the local capacity, and about 20,000 people is what you would want to host in a room. Anything above that, we do in the cloud so that you can offset any overhead of local compute, which can be quite cumbersome. Warner Studios has about 50 Zoom units, so they can do, if it's 1,000 per Zoom room, 50,000 people locally, and then the rest they do in the cloud. So we've never seen them go above 500 megs up and down during the show in full capacity, and that means the enterprise Zoom license where you have 1080p and CD quality sound in 48 kilohertz.
Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania says, what equipment drives this experience?
Well, it's PCs, very simply said. Canvas runs on Windows. It runs on Quadro cards. We know how to build the best compute imaginable. And so we are hardware agnostic. So you could run it on AMD CPUs or Intel or whatever you would want, as long as you use Quadro graphics cards, for which we build quite deep integration, it's going to be fine. The hardware is getting more and more condensed. Right now, we have a server that is 3U that is evolving to a 1U and a 2U platform. So it becomes very mobile. And the effect of that is that we're building these kind of solutions now into the enterprise space. Some very, very big law firms are rolling out Canvas worldwide as a use to create their events, their communications, their professional communications, and the meetings and the experiences that go with it.
And collaborative spaces.
And collaborative spaces, yeah. So depending on the amount of compute that we need, the server will be bigger or smaller. But it's unlike many other brands that create this locked-in hardware that you need to buy from them at incredible prices. We use very powerful compute, but we can evolve it as fast as the cards become available. You don't have to wait 6 months before we adopt, the next graphics card or the next CPU.
Next question.
Kind of a follow-up to that, JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia wants to know the server specs for the device hosting the Unreal elements. You were talking a little bit about that. You want to expand?
Yeah, sure. Well, very basically, most powerful CPU that we can get from Intel, and a PCI Express 4 motherboard with as many cards as we can. And we have one purposeful special build for us where we have a PCI Express expansion chassis, so you can install more cards as needed, so to condense even more compute into a unit. What's really key to Canvas is the PCI Express bandwidth. So we make sure that we build the best hardware topology for that. So either CPUs with 64 lanes or 128. And in PCI Express 4 at 64 lanes, it's very difficult to saturate. So that's already incredibly powerful. But the hardware isn't I would say the magic. The magic really is how do you make that all work, and how does the software need to support all of the things that are in flight. If you run Unreal Engine, multiple 4K streams, plugins that actually repeat those same streams inside the engine, plus you're sending out NDI preview, plus you're ingesting 50 NDI streams all at the same time, on demand, real-time, non-linear, always available. That's the exercise that Canvas does.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's back with, could the Canvas platform be used for virtual and or hybrid concerts or other events in the music sector?
Absolutely. We look very, very much forward to that. The topology that I have in mind to stage this would be incredibly creative and powerful. I think that we're just scratching the surface right now with what you see in the current iterations. We have very high aspirations to go in that space because I think it can be incredibly creative, powerful, and especially for the audiences and the performers, there's an entire new dimension. So think of it the following. We have brought virtual production to live events. That's what we've really done. So imagine virtual production capacity where you have the quality of that kind of outcome, where you don't have to worry about needing to shoot it 20 times over until you get it right. Everything we've built with Canvas has been related to live. When we made artwork, everything was interactive. It was always live. We've now extended that into creating virtual production capability that could marry itself with music cues, with creative staging and the like. And so for rock concerts and for many other articulations of that, I think we are just starting.
I think we have some slides that Chris can show me.
Yes, there's of course a whole bunch of ideas that we could throw out, but I'm very interested to hear if there's any other questions and aspirations from the audience.
Yeah, we got a couple more questions. Go ahead. Let's go to the next question.
JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia, California says, how much does a conference center charge for this product?
Well, it depends.
That's our favorite term.
Yeah, well, and it does. I mean, it just depends on what exactly your outcome is going to be. I mean, the more participants that you have virtual, the higher the costs, the more production that's required, the more production team that's necessary to pull off an event. It will raise the cost. So it's very difficult to say, okay, it'll be $10,000 to use it. But we've the range is somewhere between just a basic use of the studio and like for a hybrid event, 15,000, and then up from there. So if we're just doing a virtual presentation with a live audience in studio, something very basic with a PowerPoint presentation, that would probably be the baseline cost. Thomas, would you agree with that?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the production intensity. So there needs to be a price where you say we open the doors and we give you access to the elements that are augmented in the space. Great. Then the next metric is how many participants will you be supporting, and that usually becomes the metric in the price. So a lot of formulas start with a baseline cost, then per eyeball it goes up, and then production quality and overhead needs to be accounted in for if you do something with an extensive light show and whatnot. So we've seen price ranges between 15,000 and 300,000. So, and these are numbers that are very real, depending on how large is the production, how much reach is there, and think of it: if you have 84,000 people joining an event, and you charge a couple of dollars for that per eyeball, it calculates very quickly.
Yeah, and also I think maybe to also address this idea of, for example, in a convention center, what we are discussing with the convention center here in Monterey is we have these templates that we will, create, that we're creating, and they can just use these templates. So in fact, the software platform is in their hands, and they can offer it as is. So with a couple of templates that people can customize with their own content, they just plug and play with their own content, and that's it. And so that can be very cost effective. So, $5,000 a day could really cover that cost. But then if clients want to do something really particular, customized entirely in 3D, then it becomes a whole other range. But it's part of our thinking to make it really easy for any company to just walk in and say, tomorrow this is what I'm going to do.
Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles has the next one. What camera tracking system do you use?
Well, we don't have a particular preference. There's what we've avoided with Canvas is to say we go with this, and that's the only thing we support. In the end, the camera tracking goes into Unreal, so it's much more Unreal bound. If you do virtual production, you want to make sure that you choose the tracking system that you will find operators for and expertise that is local to your venue. And if that's the Star Track or OptiTracks or BlackTracks or Vicon, it doesn't really matter. The tracking system that you use is usually bound to the actions that will take place during the production. And then several tracking systems have their special niche of optimizations in specific settings. So we've seen some that are capable to run behind the LED wall by having infrared invisible lights that allow you to shoot towards the ceiling and not see the tracking beacons. So that will define that particular tracking system to be a fit for your production. But in the end, we are very, very adverse to prioritize or to favoritize one solution over another. And I actually can't speak to it unless I know what exactly you want to do with the tracking system for a specific production. In the end, Canvas will take all the data streams from these tracking systems and forward them to the engine. So we are very light touch on the tracking system itself, as this is basically pass-through data that the Unreal Engine actually will need to define the camera positions.
And the last question for the hour.
Last question comes from Jesse Mills in San Francisco Bay Area. He says, the resolution and quality or quality of John on the green screen setup merged into Unreal Engine is quite different than the Zoom and in-person contributors. Why is that, and is there room to improve it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The green screen that is set up right now at the Monterey Convention Center, and you can show it back screen, is a very, I would say, light setup. It's basically a home setup that is brought there with a couple of lights to facilitate the example of the feature. We have done green screen integrations that look as real as Doug being on stage with the same skin tone, with everything in place. And in fact, you can manage these settings and image processing elements in Canvas directly from the iPad as to match it during your production with the background. So call this a ghetto green screen versus what we could have been done if there would be more space and time, to demonstrate that in a larger setting. We do have productions, and especially here in Vegas and other studios where we have larger facilities where 30, 40-foot green screens are being used for very professional integration, and definitely we can make it look as good as it can get.
Thank you so much for your time. It's really fascinating. I think that we're just seeing the very beginning of this little revolution, and it's really fun to see it in its early days, and I can't wait to see what happens. Hopefully, when you have the next version of this up, you'll come and join us again.
Yes, it will be a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be fantastic. All right. Well, thanks again, and congratulations on getting that up. It's really an amazing platform. Thank you to our producers for all the great questions, pushing all of this out and keeping the conversation moving forward. Thanks to our panelists. Can't do this without you, and we also can't do it without our huge team on the back end that's making all of this work every morning. It's kind of an amazing thing. So thank you all, and we'll see you in after hours.
Thank you, everybody.
So
Meet you. Thank you, Doug. Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all today.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're almost there. Look at all these people that work on this.
That was pretty cool. Like the pixel on Reddit.